today we are talking about physical limitations and how that's really going to affect your consistent exercise. Before we jump in, I want to say hello and welcome to anybody who's listening to this podcast for the very first time. I'm your host, Lauren Herrera. This podcast has been publishing since 2016, and it is super evolved with all of the changes that I have been experiencing through my self-love journey that really started at the business closure of Pilates Barbell Club, and then through a really severe neck injury. So one of the things that I want to share with you is that as you are coming back from a trauma, whether it's like an emotional trauma, which is kind of a mental trauma, whether it's in your business or it's in your body, when you're in trauma, you are at a very prime time to allow the universe or God to start working with you, because at that time you feel so broken that you sometimes this isn't always going to happen, but sometimes you'll be able to realize, your ego mind will realize that you actually can't do certain things on your own, that you realize how small you are compared to the world and compared to the universe, and you realize that you actually have to lean on a higher understanding. And when you get to that point in a trauma, no matter what area of life it is, that's when you actually have a really big opportunity. So this podcast has kind of evolved from these traumas. And I see you on Instagram. Thanks so much. I see that your comment that you had a car accident, and I would definitely love to hear more about that. So shoot me a DM, even right now, if you want to talk about it. So one of the things that I want to share with you today is that as you're on this journey of really experiencing life, you are going to have things that come up for you that are going to be difficult. They're going to test you, but it's not necessarily that there's some guy in the sky testing you. I want you to think about this as a way that you are evolving, because you play a very important role in the universe. You play a very important role of how the universe is expanding. And I remember looking at this book a couple years ago, where it had a picture of what physicists say is what the Big Bang is. And so there's basically this like big projection. It's like a little picture, and it was kind of small at one end, and it was kind of like an ellipse. And the ellipse was the expansion of the universe, that there was this one thing that happened. And from that little spark was a bigger and bigger and bigger ripple, but it was in the shape of an ellipse. So it wasn't like a round drop like we would see a drop of water going into a body of water where it was perfectly round. It was elongating as it went. And the physicist said, like, we are still an expansion of this initial Big Bang. The Big Bang is continuing to bang. And if you think about our mind, that our mind is creating things. And remember Charles Haanel, when I've talked about this from the Master Key System, when he says, when is a battleship a battleship? Is it a battleship when it is in battle? Is it a battleship when it's on the ocean? Is it a battleship when it's on land and it's fully constructed? Is it a battleship when it is under construction? Is it a battleship when it is a blueprint on a piece of paper? Is it a battleship when it's an idea in somebody's mind? And so if we think about our mind and us being humans, our mind is creating things in this world. We are expanding in the universe. And so when you're under trauma, at whatever area of life, instead of viewing it as a lesson that God is teaching you, or a lesson that you haven't gotten yet, in a way that it is being done to you, if you can get out of that mindset and say that this experience is actually helping me participate in the expansion of the universe, I am participating in the Big Bang right now. If you can think about that, then all of a sudden things will get a little bit lighter and easier. And so the lighter and easier part does not feel lighter and easier necessarily when you're going through it. And on Saturday, I was doing a weightlifting session with barbells. Thank you very much. I think now this is my 6th or 7th week using barbells again. And I did back squats with 100 pounds. And I was thinking to myself, you don't feel strong when you're growing. You don't feel strong when you're going through the shit. You only feel strong when you're through it, right? And you've leveled up. And so this is something that really stuck with me over the weekend, and I kind of prevented myself from working, so to speak, from doing a podcast over the weekend or doing stuff on social media over the weekend, because I'm actually trying to learn balance so that I don't do burnout, because I know that one of the things that my neck will do to get me to slow down is to cause me pain, where I can choose to just slow down, or I can go and not allow myself a break, because breaks are important for everyone. So I can choose to slow down and have breaks that I do on purpose, or I can just press myself until my neck or my body says, you need a break, and then gives me pain where I have to lay down. So that's what I was working on this weekend, but I couldn't wait to get over here and podcast with you guys, with you girls, because when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the mess, when you're in the hard part, it doesn't feel good. And you can have people say to you, this is a really great time. All you can go from here is up, or this is your opportunity to expand, or you're growing and growing is uncomfortable. None of that stuff feels good to hear, and it really feels like a bunch of bullshit. And sometimes when I podcast here, I think, oh my gosh, like if someone's really suffering right now, this isn't going to make sense. This is going to be the last thing that they want to hear. But, I've been through kind of all of it at this point. I mean, not necessarily all of it, but I've been through like really big life events that are the make it and break it moments, right? And I've been broken, and I've been going higher and higher and higher. And I have to share this with you really quick too, before we get into this. So I got a letter from an attorney last week, and it's for a collections, because I have a lot of bad debt from when my business closed and I was just using credit cards to do life. And so I have this letter from an attorney, and I was thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to call and have a conversation and say to them, why haven't I paid this bill since 2015? So I'm like, okay, well, 2015, my gym closed. 2016, I was working like part-time, and some hours were with minimum wage. 2017, I herniated the discs in my neck. 2018, we went through divorce, and at the time of the divorce, my former stepdaughter was on life support from getting septic from pneumonia. And then now we have 2019. And so I was like, wow, like when you put it all on paper, you're like, oh my God, like that was really hard. And even though I had this outlet to be in a place of communication and a place of service and giving with the things that I knew how to do to talk about self-love or talk about your body or whatever experience was happening, I was able to give that experience to other people. But in the moment, my own like personal feelings were pretty low, and pretty low self-esteem, and pretty like, if I know all these spiritual truths and I've been reading about all this stuff, why am I still suffering? And that is a very frustrating place to be, but you're suffering because it's like not over, or like you haven't released something, or maybe the things that you envisioned about yourself and how you were going to show up as an adult, you need more experience to then actually go out and teach that to other people. And that's really where I've come to, because I was thinking about when I was in Pilates and teaching fitness when I was in my 20s. And so I got my first fitness certification in 2000. So I was right out of high school, graduated in June. I think the certification was over that summer. And I think back now and I think, oh my gosh, like here I am teaching people who were twice my age how to do fitness, and I'm trying to be motivational to them. Yet my life experiences were extreme already at that point, right? Because my mom had a stalker. We went through that trauma when I was 9 years old. But my physical experiences to show up and tell somebody, hey, I know how hard it is to consistently exercise. I know how hard it is to put yourself first when you have a family. I know how hard it is to want to lose weight. I know how hard it is to overcome an eating disorder, which at that point I didn't. So I want to share this with you because when you're going through a hard time, it does not feel good. It does not feel good. And the last thing that you want to do is say that there's some guy in the sky, waving a wand and giving you lessons to learn. That's not how it's working. You are part of the cosmic expansion, and the things that you are going through now are going to give you the the wherewithal, the wisdom to then actually help expand with other people. So keep that in mind when you're going through a tough time, okay? So with this episode, I can't even believe it, 478, episode 478, we are talking about physical limitations and exercising consistently. Now, we are only like 6 or 7 weeks away from Thanksgiving in the States. And if you're in an area of the world that the weather is going to get cooler, it's going to be raining, it's going to be snowing, you're going to have more events. It's like school season, I think, for everywhere around the world. I think everybody's going back to school, no matter what hemisphere you're on, or what hemisphere you're on. No, there's southern. I don't know. You know what I mean. On whatever side of the planet you're on, whatever side of the weather you're on, we're going to have more responsibilities coming up where we're having more obligations on top of regular life. So this is the time where a lot of people are going to be slowing down and taking less care of themselves. And if you celebrate Jewish holidays, it's Rosh Hashanah. Do I say it right? I'm half Jewish, right? My dad's Jewish, and I'm trying to get into that culture a little bit more. So, but I think I shouldn't be using technology if I'm actually celebrating today. But anyway, here we are. So if you're going to celebrate that, or you're going to put your mind in a space of celebration and newness, today's a new year. Jewish New Year today. So when you are gearing up for this busy season, this is the time where we're going to be putting ourselves last on the list and our body last on the list. And what I've noticed about teaching consistent exercise and noticing the patterns that we have culturally about when we have this prescribed weight gain, and where January is going to set in, and then now we're going to set all these goals, and now we're going to take care of ourselves, and now we're going to do a journal and meditation and all of that kind of stuff. This is a cultural norm that says from Halloween on, this is where we're going to start gaining weight, right? So consistent exercise is so important, and consistent exercise is important because you need to take care of your body. It's not about aesthetics. Your aesthetics will transform, and you will become more attractive the more you take care of your body. And attractive in the sense that your energetic signal is going to attract better things to you. And when we can understand this about attraction, it doesn't matter how much cellulite is on the stomach or the back of my legs, right? I'll speak for myself. I've got cellulite on my stomach and on the back of my legs. Those things that are the cultural norm of what's ugly, those things are going to matter less and less to your attraction. When you are more attractive, you're going to have better opportunities, better experiences, better interactions with people. That's what our body is attractive for. It doesn't, because we're never going to fit into every cultural stereotype of what attractiveness is. So it's our job to switch what attractive actually means. So when we're going into this season of saying that we're going to gain weight and we're going to be inconsistent with exercise, and then we're going to be susceptible to all of this fitness marketing that's about your aesthetics and take care of yourself so that you look good, so that you feel good, we have to be cognizant of that and understand that consistent exercise means consistent oil changes and consistent tire rotations and consistent taking fiber if you don't eat enough fiber. We take better care of our vehicles and our phones than we do of our body. So I want you to think right now for this episode that your consistent exercise actually just means consistently taking care of your physical body, because this is the body that you have until the day that you die. So when you have a physical limitation and you want to exercise consistently, there's some things that I want you to think about when you're feeling crappy that you can't actually exercise. So A Course in Miracles, a metaphysical text, talks about how time is here for us to learn and experience, and that our experience here in the world is a projection, that it's actually, we can choose to make it be the happy dream, or we can choose to stay living in the nightmare. And the nightmare is that we're separate from God, which then makes us separate from each other, which then makes us feel competitive because we have to fight for everything that we're getting, right? And that's like an old Darwinian concept anyway about evolution, which has proved to not actually be real, that actually evolution is spontaneous and it happens out of necessity. It doesn't happen out of a slow process. And by the way, Darwin stole his idea from another scientist, but he was first to press, essentially. And so he gets all the credit, but it's been proven to be false. So keep that in mind, but also understand that when we're in the nightmare, a spiritual nightmare, that we're separate from the God that created everything, or the energy that created everything, causes us to feel separate from each other, which then causes us to compare ourselves, which then makes us be on a scale of there are people better than us, and in this case, better looking than us, because we think about consistent exercise just for aesthetics. And then there's going to be people that are worse than us. So what happens if we're stuck in this line of there's people better than me? Well, if there's people better than me and better looking than me, then that means that I'm not good enough. And that's going to put me in an energetic state that I'm not going to be able to succeed. There's always going to be a reason why I can't have whatever it is that I'm dreaming of. And then now, if I say that I'm better than somebody else, we could have guilt come up, that why do we deserve to feel better when there's people suffering? Or we could be really judgmental and project our judgments that we have on ourselves, that we're actually thinking about the people who we think are better than ourselves. So if we're judging and we're saying somebody else is better, if somebody else is better, then that means the lens that we're using has to say that we're not good, we're not enough. Well, if that's my lens about myself because I'm watching somebody else that I'm saying is higher, then what's going to happen to the person that I'm judging myself, who I'm saying is lower? I'm going to judge them with the lens in which I'm using to judge myself against these people that I put on the pedestal. So if we live in that nightmare, we're going to have a whole lot of things happen, because that's the view that we're looking at the world and we're looking at our experience. If we choose to go into the happy dream that we have never been separate from God, and that we are all a piece of God, and the things that's separating ourselves is this projection of what we think our bodies are, then we will actually be able to see the people who we once thought were better than us as a way to motivate us and inspire us, and say, well, if they're a piece of God and I'm a piece of God, then I can do that too. And then the people who are not where we are, if we're in a better life experience than them, we can do things to then bring them up, right? We can support them in many ways. So if we choose to live in this happy dream from A Course in Miracles, that we are all connected, then these traumas or these hardships or these limitations that we're having, that rigidness and that stuckness will loosen its grip so that we can expand, right? Because we just shifted out of a nightmare. We're changing what's actually happening. And the more, I mean, we can go so deep into all of this, where some people think that our dream state is the actual reality and this state is the false reality. So there's so many rabbit holes that you can go down to try to like play with how you're going to look at this life experience. And we just have to choose a belief system that's going to make sense for us. So if we look at time as a way to learn, and we look at quantum physics, and we look at some people who have miraculous healings, like there's miraculous healings with people who go to Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced retreats, which I want to go to, where in 4 days, they're not using canes. In 4 days, they are being able to see because they've genetically changed the expression of the genes in their eyes. And this isn't just some crazy woo-woo talk. Like Joe Dispenza, they measure people. They have graphs, they put electro things on people's bodies. Like they prove on paper these metaphysical, these miraculous healings. So we can have a state like that where quote unquote people who teach law of attraction, quote unquote, quote unquote, will say that you can collapse time. Well, you can collapse time if you're ready to actually get the experience and just be done with it. So if we look at these times where we're in this expansion, and the expansion is often the painful spot, we have to shift from the nightmare and whatever nightmare feeling evolves from that, of how you're stuck and how you're not going to be attractive and how you're not going to get the things that you want and how you're not going to get out of pain. We have to shift out of that and out of a guy in the sky giving us lessons into I'm part of the cosmic expansion. So if we have expansion over time, this timepiece is us to have this experience. Our time of going through the healing process is going to give us a better experience when we're done with it, and an experience that we can give to others. So this belief system is actually going to open up the guidance. So I want to share with you, if this is your first time that you're hearing this, that I've always had neck problems. And in fact, I think it was 2010, I had my first MRI. And on my dad's side of the family, they have nerve tumors. So my grandma had nerve tumors. She had them removed. My dad had nerve tumors, and his nerve tumors were actually on his spinal cord. And my dad is actually in science books because he should not be walking, because his spinal cord at his cervical spine is so thin, he's a medical anomaly that he's actually functioning. So when I was having these really bad migraines in my 20s, I scheduled an MRI and I said, look, on the paternal side of my family, we have these nerve tumors. I have all this pain. I want to see if I have nerve tumors too. So I go in and they're like, well, you actually have a slight herniated disc, but the problem is that you have a forward head. All of your vertebrae in your neck are going forward. You need to sleep with a neck collar. Well, let me tell you that lasted for like 20 minutes. That's really hard to sleep with a neck collar. So I kind of knew that I had this neck problem. And I thought that my neck problem was really going to give me a problem like in the last 10 years of my life. Like I really thought that the problems were going to manifest way, way, way in the future. So in 2016, so my gym closed in 2015, right? I'm still having migraines, all that kind of stuff. 2016, I sit in front of the computer more than I ever have in my entire life because this podcast was daily. I had interviews and I edited. I edited the interviews like crazy, and I had commercials. It was a whole lot of work, and I had a write-up for everything. I had a website page for everything, and it was daily. So it was a whole lot of work. And so I sat for long periods of time. Well, I don't have the greatest posture. I mean, who does? So my neck really got bad, and there were days where I would wear sunglasses while I was editing, so that I could look at the computer screen. And the migraines would last for like 4 days, 3 days no migraine. And if you've ever had a migraine for any amount of time, it kind of feels like a hangover when you're done with it. So even though you're not in pain, you are exhausted from dealing with the pain. So 2016 was a whole lot of that. And finally, in March of 2017, the chiropractor that I was seeing, she goes, you know, this pain that you get in your shoulder, it's actually called radicular pain, and it's stemming from your cervical spine. I really think we need to order you an MRI for your neck. I'm like, okay, great. So I go in for my MRI, and I actually wasn't in a flare that day. But then that Friday, I had an MRI on a Wednesday. The Friday, my neck hurt the most it had ever hurt in my entire life. And I actually started crying in the middle of a Pilates session because the neck the pain was just so great. I flew to the doctor's appointment because he wouldn't give me a pain reliever without seeing me. I sped the whole way there. And that day when I was at CVS to go pick up my prescription is when my chiropractor called me, and she's like, we got the results. There's blood on your spine. These are fresh injuries. What did you do? And I'm like, nothing out of the ordinary has changed. And the pain today is more severe than ever. So turns out there's 2 herniated discs. One of them is torn. So when you have a herniated disc, it's pushing on the spinal cord, which is going to give you radiating nerve pain to the areas of your body that it innervates. When you have the leaking fluid out of the disc, it's aggravating the nerves that it's surrounding. So then it's like burning. And actually, like, even though a disc, an area of your spine is responsible for an innervation in your body, when you have a spinal injury, or really any injury, the pain doesn't always have to make sense. So most of my pain was actually from the shoulders up, which didn't necessarily make sense for where the injury was, but that's where the pain was. So when I'm in this state, it was a very small window of helplessness. And I'm really grateful that I had the mindset to shift out of the helplessness relatively quickly. So I'm at CVS and I'm crying my eyes out because in that moment, I'm thinking the severity of this pain is actually what my pain is going to be like for the rest of my life. That was my first fear. And I couldn't even speak when I was actually checking out. And the woman that checked me out, she felt so bad. And I came in a couple days later and talked to her about it. But it was bad. It was super bad. And when I got home, I laid on the couch and I was still crying. And I called one of my best friends, Curry, and I told her what happened. And she's like, "You're in the best hands. You work at the best studio. We work with injuries all the time. You are in the best place for this to have happen." And she's like, "We'll find you a great surgeon. You're going to be fine." Because actually, when the chiropractor read my MRI results, what she interpreted them was that a disc had slipped so far that it went underneath another disc. And she was like, "I don't understand what this radiologist is saying, but this sounds really, really bad." And my general practitioner said the same thing, that like, it sounds like a disc is underneath another disc. You really damaged your neck. So at that time, it was very much like surgery is going to be in your reality. The other things that put me into a state of allowing was these questions that I asked myself, or the thoughts that I observed happening. So one of the thoughts that I observed happening was that I felt a sense of relief that I was unable to work as hard as I was working. And I've always worked very, very hard. I mean, I started working before I got my license because my mom said, "You have to be able to pay for your portion of the insurance and you have to pay for your gasoline, your fuel. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get your license." So I started working before. So that was at 15. So I've always worked hard, and working hard was something that was revered really in my upbringing. And so when I was in a state where I physically couldn't work, I actually had a sense of relief. And then as soon as I had the sense of relief of, oh, I don't have to work so hard, I felt incredibly guilty because part of my work is of service, right? So now I'm feeling guilty for not wanting to help people. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is terrible. And so I kind of like waffled back and forth in those emotions of being relieved and then also feeling guilty for the relief. And so what I remembered was that people have miraculous healings, right? I've interviewed so many people on this podcast who their moment of realizing they needed to love themselves came from a life and death situation, came from them being at the hospital at death's door, and they realized they weren't loving themselves. And when they started to love themselves, their vital signs changed. They had miraculous healings. They got out of pain from injuries. And so I had that in my head and I thought, okay, well, they did it. I can do it too, right? So I started looking up how emotions affect your body. And I got to Louise Hay. And Louise Hay is the reason why we have Hay House Productions and Hay House Publishing. A lot of our spiritual thought leaders are affiliated with her, and she passed away a couple years ago. And so she has a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And through her 40, 50 years of helping people heal. And she actually reversed cancer cell production in her body by getting into her emotions. She has this experience of certain emotions have a defined outcome in the body. So you can heal your body, and you can look up whatever type of pain that you're in, and you can see what the corresponding negative emotion is. And then you can start to get into positive affirmations to start to reprogram your brain, which will reprogram your body into reversing whatever ailment that you're in. So I started doing the affirmations that were for the neck. And a lot of it had to do with inflexible thinking or, because there was like affirmations for neck pain, for migraines, for like neck injury, there's different severities of stuff. So I kind of would cycle through different mantras. And then one of the other reasons why I would point to that, of why there's several, inflexible thinking, that you're only seeing one opportunity or one way to go about things. And then also constantly looking behind you. And I'm like, wow, yeah, like I do hang on to a lot of past things. And some of my inflexible thinking is that, well, in my understanding and my own experience, is that if I have an intuitive feeling about something, I deny that intuitive feeling, that I don't believe it to be true, or I think that my red flag intuition is actually me being mean. I don't listen to it, and I rationalize, and I personal development myself out of an intuitive impulse, and I force a situation. And so those mantras and that way of thinking of, there are millions of people around the world that have forward head. There are millions of people who have a neck, a neck that is structurally just like mine with the vertebra going forward. They don't have herniated discs and they're not in pain. And so when we know that there are structural abnormalities in bodies all around the world, and some people have pain and some people don't, we can go into these spiritual mystic type people who are also, now quantum physics is now proving all these things to be true that have been said over the centuries. We can go to this area of healing and understand that the determining factor of us having pain is us and how we're viewing the world, and how are we viewing this projection. Are we in the happy dream that we're supported and connected and everything's working out for us and we're part of this cosmic expansion, or are we in the nightmare that we're separate and we're separate from each other? And so this comes back to perspective. And we know from Dr. Bruce Lipton that our perspective, our proprioception, our perspective, our skin is picking up what's happening in the environment. So this is why we can walk into a building that has a bunch of low vibration or a funeral home. We can walk into somewhere and feel different vibes. This is where the slang of vibes come from. We can walk into an area where people were listening to uplifting music and people are happy, and we will feel that energy. So first, our skin is picking up this information. Our skin takes in the information, our brain analyzes it. Is this good? Is this bad? Based on my belief system. Once we decide, is this good, is this bad, then our cells are going to get all of that information. What's in our cells? In our cells is our DNA. Our DNA is going to get the information. Is this good? Is this bad? Our DNA is going to then express genes in ease or dis-ease, healing or not. So we're going to have things change on a biological level when we're in this healing process, but then we're also going to have things change emotionally, because when we're in this broken state of physical limitation and we're going to choose to feel that we're supported, then what happens? We're going to actually start to get support in the quote unquote real world. And so what that has looked like for me was first, Curry, okay, one of my best friends at the time, the husband, right? Like he was supportive at that time. And then Louise Hay, kind of in that order of what was showing up for me. After Louise Hay, it's Dr. Sarno in The Divided Mind. After Dr. Sarno, it's Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza. After Joe Dispenza, and it just keeps going. So let me see if I can go in order off the top. Well, there's not really going to be an order. Like, let's just be real about that. I've been reading A Course in Miracles for years, and I'm like just past the halfway point of actually just reading the metaphysical text. There's lessons, there's a teaching manual, and then there's the actual text of the course that's similar to like how the Bible kind of reads. So Course in Miracles, what else? I was able to get out of chronic pain for a couple of weeks to a couple of months with Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation, although that was not maintainable. Let's be real, I didn't create a miraculous healing that lasted, but oh well, it's fine. I have time to learn the lesson, right? But I use prescriptions still. I went back to using prescriptions for the inflammation. However, I don't use as many as I used to. And my guidance has kept opening up to where I have a 500 milligram CBD tincture that I take at night. And then I have a 1500 milligram CBD tincture that I take after I do weightlifting sessions. And I have a cream that I rub on my neck that has CBD in it. And then I'm also still using Adapt X1, the serotonin modulator. So I'm using things on a biological level to assist my cells And it's a forward and back feed system, right? So if my cells are feeling good and my cellular environment in my body is feeling good, my perception of life is also going to be more in a high vibration. When that perception of life is on a high vibration, my mindset is going to be in a better place. And my mindset is what's projecting things, right? It's the thought that says the signal, and it's the feeling that magnetizes it to you. And if Dr. Bruce Lipton in quantum physics is sharing with us that our mind, well, Joe Dispenza says this too, our unconscious mind is a record of the past and a map of the future. If I'm biologically feeling crappy, right? Like if I'm drinking too much or if I'm eating too much junk food, my cells aren't going to be feeling good. The cells are going to send a signal, I don't feel good, to my brain. My brain is going to search for a reason why I'm not feeling good, because that's Hebb's law. Nerve cells that fire together wire together. If I am not using my unconscious mind to project what I want, to map what I want, it's going to revert to the record of the past. So if I'm not taking care of my body on a biological level with what I'm putting into my body, I am going to default into the record of the past. What's the record of my past? The record of my past is being fearful because my mom had a stalker and the guy had my cat stolen and tortured when he went to jail. My record of the past is a tumultuous relationship with my father since childhood. My record of the past is dating a psychopath that actually ended up going to jail because he tried to kill somebody. Thank God he was on the other side of the country. My record of the past is a marriage that didn't work. My record of the past is a family trauma of a child near death. My record of the past is feeling bad that I had to move in with my mom. My record. So you can go through your record of the past of what stored memories, or you can choose to live in the happy dream, be open to the expansion process, be open to the healing process, and then project what you actually want, because you're choosing what you want. You're choosing that connection. And this all comes down to belief. So I encourage you that when you're in this position, that you take the opportunity to lean into the happy dream, to lean into this process as you expanding, and it's helping the cosmos expand, because that's going to get you into a position where it's going to be easier for you to actually move your body, take care of your body, exercise consistently. So think about that. And when you are given marketing material, because you're going to start to get hit with it, all about the aesthetics and weight gain during this holiday season that's coming up, I want you to choose to get into the happy dream. That taking care of your body is just like taking care of your precious material wealth, your material belongings that you have. Because if you switch into, I'm going to look at this woman who has a 4-pack and who has triceps, the back of her arm doesn't flab. If you choose to look at that as your motivation, you just put yourself in a less than situation, because she has a quote unquote better looking body than you. She has a more attractive body than you. Your attraction, how people are going to interact with you, because your attraction, you wanting to feel attraction, is really that you want that human connection. Your human connection is coming from your energy. That's what's going to make you attractive, to have people around you and for you to feel that love radiating from their heart chakra. That's what you're after. That's the reason why you want to feel attractive. So switch your brain out of the nightmare that we're separate from God and we're separate from each other, into the happy dream that we are connected to God and we're connected to each other. And that our attractiveness is bringing people towards us to feel that love and that connection. It's not about if you have fat on the back of your arms. That's not the attractive component here. Okay. So think about that. And actually, if you want to take the next step, go to, I feel so silly, go to bit.ly/mind-body-spirit waitlist, because I'm actually going to be teaching you all of this in a very practical way that's going to be easy to digest. You're going to have personal conversations with me about it. You're going to get weekly videos about it. You're going to get downloadable homework sheets to make the things make sense, so that you can keep switching yourself into the happy dream instead of this nightmare that most of us are living, especially with our body. So this course is going to start on October 14th. It's only 5 weeks long. It ends 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. So if you're in the States and you celebrate Thanksgiving and you're already like, there's no way I'm going to have time to do anything else, you got a 2-week in between before Thanksgiving happens. So go to the waitlist, Mind, Body, Spirit waitlist, bit.ly/mind, body, spirit waitlist. And by being on the waitlist, you get 30% off. If you did the Body and Belief Challenge, you still have a week to sign up and get 50% off. So everybody go to the wait list. And if you're in the Mind, Body, Belief Challenge, I'll be able to give you that 50% discount instead of 30% that everybody else is going to get if they go onto the wait list. All right, everyone, thanks so much for being here. I super appreciate you. And I hope that this was helpful. Send me a direct message. If you're on Instagram, it's at Lauren Michelle Herrera. Send me a private message. If you're on Facebook, go to facebook.com/herrera.lauren, and we'll catch you next week.